introductions.
All right, great. Well, thank you. Good afternoon and welcome everybody. Before I forget to say this, I wanted to let everyone know that we are recording this session so that we can share it with folks who couldn't be here today. I wanted to thank you all for being here at this information session about Switzer Fellowships. I'm Erin Lloyd. I am the program director at the Switzer Foundation, and I'm joining you from Hollowell, Maine, where I live. I am lucky enough to have the job of managing the fellowship program, and so I will lead us briefly through some background information about the foundation and then general information about the fellowship. And I will also address the top 3 questions that we usually get at this time of year, since I imagine that some of you have those questions. We also have Switzer Fellows with us today, 2 of whom are going to share some of their perspective, having successfully gone through the fellowship selection process. And last but definitely not least, we are joined by Cora Preston, the Foundation's network manager. And Cora, would you like to say hello and offer any logistics or housekeeping information?
Sure thing. Thanks, Erin. And welcome to everyone who's here with us right now. It looks like we have 43 people in the audience, so thank you all for taking the time for this today. My name is Cora Preston. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the network manager for the Switzer Foundation. My job is to manage foundation communications and cultivate community within the Switzer network. And today I'm here to manage the Zoom meeting. So if you're having any technical difficulties, feel free to let me know in the chat and I will do my best to help. Please also, as we go through this session, feel free to enter in your questions for Erin, Natalia, and Gabriella in the Q&A section of the Zoom meeting, which is at the bottom of your screen. And then I will read out those questions from the Q&A for our folks to answer. And then I will also try to keep an eye on the chat throughout the session. So I think that's everything for logistics. Back to you, Erin.
Okay, great, thank you. So I'm going to start my overview, and again, hope to keep it brief, or I will keep it brief, since the main goal of today is for all of you to be able to ask questions. And then I will introduce our 2 Switzer Fellows who are with us, Gabriella and Natalia. But first, just really quick background on the foundation. The Robert and Patricia Switzer Foundation was started back in 1986 by Robert and Patricia Switzer with the proceeds from the sale of the Dayglow Paint Corporation. I would encourage anyone interested in the fellowship to check out our website, which includes a donor legacy statement, which will give you more information about the Switzer brothers and the evolution of our programs. Basically, through the foundation, they hoped to assist graduate students dedicated to applied environmental problem solving and to encourage them to become leaders prepared to tackle emerging and increasingly complex challenges. Fast forward to the current time, and the foundation has recognized the interconnectedness of environmental and social issues, expanding on what was once a real focus on like hard science expertise to include things like law, policy, advocacy, public health, education, a really broad range of expertise. And so among our fellowship alumni are scientists, lawyers, community activists, business leaders, teachers, public health experts, as well as people in policy and decision-making positions. It's an incredible group of people who now comprise the Switzer network. In fact, there are more than 700 Switzer Fellows in the network now, and part of what we do is to work really hard to help connect newer fellows with their peers in the network. The main criteria for becoming a Switzer Fellow is that you are in graduate school at a school based in New England, one of the 6 New England states, or California, that you plan to be enrolled for the full academic year 2024-2025, that your focus is on environmental improvement through whatever issue you work on and from whatever angle. The benefits to the fellowship include a $17,000 cash award, engagement with the Switzer network, and access to our other grant programs that are all focused on building your leadership and your career once you're done with school. Let's see. Applications are due January 8th, and I'll just talk for a quick minute about our selection process, which has essentially 3 tiers. In the first tier of review, each application is reviewed by 2 members of the Switzer network, so Switzer Fellowship alumni. They will score each application based on a set of criteria that is used for all the applications. And then based on a standardized set of those scores, 80 applications will go on to a second tier of review. And that's out of probably about 250 applications, I'm guessing. That second tier of review is also managed by members of the Switzer network who have not been engaged with the first tier of review, so it's a new set of eyes. And from that second tier of review, we'll determine who moves on to the interview stage. Ultimately, 20 applicants will be interviewed from California schools and 20 from New England schools, and then we will select 10 from each of those regions to be the 2024 Switzer Fellows. So it's a fairly complex selection process that takes several months to go through. But the idea is that we bring in fellows and different sets of eyes and different perspectives to help us make this really important decision. I am sure I have left out important information that you will all ask us about, but right now I would like to invite our two fellows who have joined us today to introduce themselves and also to add their perspective to anything I just said, including maybe things they would have liked to know as potential applicants, or anything about how the fellowship has impacted them, anything that these folks would benefit from hearing. And I will call on Gabriela Rodriguez. Gabriela, and then you can kick it to Natalia when you're done.
Sounds good. Thank you, Erin. Thanks everybody for joining. I'm really happy to be here and still be connected with the folks here at the Switzer Network. My name is Gabriela. I take she, her pronouns, and I'm a 2022 fellow. A little bit about me. I'm originally from Miami, Florida. I'm Latina, I'm second gen, and I graduated from a minority serving undergraduate school. And these are things about me and my identity that are important to my work. Prior to graduate school, during which time I received the Switzer Fellowship, I worked on climate justice advocacy and education efforts in Miami, Florida. And then after that, attended Yale University, the Yale School of the Environment, to focus on how to center community voices in our transition to clean energy, very briefly put. And during that time, was awarded the Switzer Fellowship to support my graduate studies. And it really, really impacted my experience in graduate school in many positive ways that I'll share a little bit about. But now I recently graduated. So this past May, graduated from my grad program. And now I'm a policy analyst at the U.S. Department of Energy's Office of Energy Justice and Equity, where I'm helping to implement a new clean electricity tax credit program, and specifically focusing on how we engage communities around the country and different stakeholders around the country in the benefits of this tax credit program, and essentially how we can help spur clean energy benefits in underserved communities and what that means for intentional, effective engagement. And so that's a little bit about me and what I do. And if anything there interests you or piques you as somebody who's part of the Switzer Network, as Erin mentioned, I would really love to connect with you. So I'm happy to put my contact information in the chat box or whoever is best later on. But now I guess I'll share a little bit about some things that, like I would have liked to have known as an applicant, things that I maybe would have asked about on this call or in general, and some ways the fellowship has impacted me. I do have some notes. So if you see me moving my eyes, that's why, because there's truly so much about this fellowship that has impacted me and things that I think about. So I want to make sure I capture it all right. But I think a few of the things that I would have liked to have known as an applicant beforehand would have been just, I would have been interested in hearing a little bit more about the specific grants and services that Switzer offers outside of the $17,000 stipend. So maybe I would have asked for like some examples of how one of the many grants that Switzer has for their fellows was used towards a project. And maybe how a specific connection through the Switzer network led to like a very incredible opportunity for somebody, things like that. I think I would have liked to hear a little bit more about that, because I think like many here, I was very hyper-focused, of course, on the stipend, because that's very important, but there are other aspects of the network that I don't think I fully appreciated until I was in the retreats and connecting with people and realizing like, wow, these things are available to me. I think I also, speaking of retreats, would have liked a little bit more detailed information about the retreats themselves. So what is the purpose of them? What will I get out of them? I didn't really think too much about that. And looking back on it, would have definitely liked to have learned more about it before applying, although it wouldn't have changed my decision to apply. And then I think a few ways that the fellowship has impacted me. So there are many, many ways, but I think that the main ones that I think about that come first to mind are definitely just the connections. It's, Erin mentioned there are over 700 people in this network, but even regardless of the 700 people in this network, the people that you meet in your cohort, the 19 other people that you meet in your cohort is just, it's so beneficial. I met people through my fellowship experiments, including Natalia. I have met people in this field who are in some way or another laser focused on equity and justice like I am. But for the first time in my professional career, I felt like I met people who are focused on equity and justice, but outside of the social sciences and outside of the soft sciences per se. And so I was meeting people who are studying things like soil chemistry and ecosystem services, but how that, connected to equity and justice. And I think that was really beneficial for me. I think the other main benefit that's similar is meeting people around the country. I think grad school, as I'm sure most people on this call know, that you meet people around the country who are studying in your similar field, but just to widen that was great. And I think in addition, the retreats were great. They offered me a lot of skills in terms of leadership and communications and DEI skills in environmental work. So I know I've been talking for a while, so I'll just end with my last point is to apply. When I was thinking about what I would have, liked to have heard, I didn't really have any doubts in applying, but applying is never easy for things. I'll be honest, it takes time. We're all very busy people, but in case it's not said on this call, I just want to make sure it's voiced that you should definitely apply and not think twice about it. You deserve to receive this award. You deserve to apply, and it's incredibly worth the time and effort that it takes to apply. I think that's all for me. So off to you, Natalia.
Thanks, Gabby. Hi, everyone. My name is Natalia Aristizabal. I use she, her pronouns. I am a PhD candidate at the University of Vermont. Originally from Colombia and have been an immigrant in this country for 22 years. And my research focuses on trying to understand how we can farming practices and how we can manage land in agricultural landscapes to find co-benefits for nature protection and also improving farmers' livelihoods. And so during my PhD, my research has focused on coffee farming in Costa Rica, and also trying to understand and model how deforestation and climate change might be affecting these ecological processes or ecosystem services that benefit farmers. And to get right to this topic, I would like to share a little bit of how I applied to the fellowship. So when I started my program in 2018, my office mate had just gotten the award. So I was very aware of it since early in my program. And I knew that I had to become a PhD candidate. So I was waiting until then. And then as soon as I became a candidate, I applied. And I didn't get it my first time around. So that's one of the things that I wanted to share. Don't get discouraged if you don't get it on your first round. And actually, after the selection process, you can get some feedback on your application. And I did, and I was very encouraged to apply again. And so I did the next year, and that's when I got it. And so I'm very happy that like Gabby said, it's totally worth it. It was, I put more time into it the second time around, and really listening to the feedback, which was actually, and I hope I can share, some things that I wish I had known was to maybe on the personal essay, express more clearly how my current research is connected to my career plans. So spend more time on reflecting on it and also just describing it on my personal essay. That's something that I changed, and I focus more on my second time around. And also something that I wish I had known was to use better the website, the Switzer Fellows website, and look through the network to find people that might be in your area or in the program, or someone that you can reach out to and get coaching through the application process. Definitely, someone to read your personal essay, but and give you comments, but also if you make it to the interview, someone to coach you through the interview, someone you can practice those interview questions. And then another one I wish I had known was to, and this is something that we always wish we know how we do, that is to submit earlier than you might expect, because there are some short answers that are not included in your personal essay, so that to make sure you allocate some time to think about those short answers too in the application. And then the ways that this fellowship has impacted me, it's been honestly just so positive. I'm so excited about everything that I've experienced. You know, I'm in Gabriela's cohort, and just meeting my cohort was like amazing, and, you know, great connections, lovely people, and also like with similar interests, but from different backgrounds. So that's just like a lots of like personal and professional benefits just from your cohort. And through the retreats, that's also, you know, like well, both of them were really great, but for example, from the communications in a policy retreat, I really sort of like thought about my research in a more realistic way, enables, you know, thinking and very clearly about how we can actually make some policy impact and the different roles that scientists can have in policy. And so it really like opened my network and the world of possibilities outside of academia and impacting policy through this workshop, but also from like meeting other fellows in the network and getting to see examples of their careers. Just, I'm very interested in a career outside of academia, so it's been really helpful to just see what are other options, you know, the other options that are out there. And with that said too, this has been expressed, but like really the network is just such an amazing benefit to know that you can like move to a new city or look who's in the area that you want to move to and know that you can reach out to them. And also we get a lot of like job opportunities and fellowships and opportunities happening, and you hear about them. So you just like, it really opens like the world of opportunities and network. And then what else? Oh, and then something else that I thought would be important is that sometimes when we are in school, maybe we haven't had like an example, or wait, we haven't had like had to like have a resume, right? We only have our CVs. So another thing that I would keep in mind is to put some time into translating that CV into a resume, and getting some feedback. Perhaps like I'm sure most schools have resources, like a career center or someone that can mentor you on how to really work on that resume, which is very different from the CV. So to pay attention to that too.
Thank you, Natalia. Thank you, Gabby. That was really excellent advice. We did get a question in the chat for Erin about the like eligibility. And the question is, how is PhD candidate defined? Is that post-qualifying exams or what other criteria?
Yeah, actually, I'm about to, I'm going to answer a general eligibility question, and I will hit on that. So that might be a great segue for me to do that, because what I thought I would do, there's 3 questions we get all the time, a lot of, and so I thought I would just knock those off right here, and since that may help some of you. So the first question I was going to mention is eligibility in relation to where you are in your program. So I'll go with PhD first, since that question came up. So for PhD students, we want you to apply after a certain point in your studies, because we're really focused on supporting fellows who will go on to applied work, which can be in a university setting, as long as you can be really clear how you'll apply the work beyond, like outside of academia. And we have found that over the years, people who are farther along in their program are better able to articulate how they will do that, and are therefore more competitive. So if you are a PhD student, you will need to either be finished with 3 years of your program by July 1st of 2024, or have passed your qualifying exams. And that's what we mean. So Natalia mentioned that she was a PhD candidate, but if you, either of those things, either 3 years by July 1st or have passed your qualifying exams. So hopefully that answers your question. For master's students, if you're in a traditional 2-year program, you would apply during the first year of your program. The fellowship would then support you in the second year of your program. If you're a master's student in a 3-year program, which sometimes is like a dual degree, or if you're in a JD program, which we consider part of the master's pool, you would do the same, but you'd kind of have the added benefit of having another chance to apply the following year. The fellowship could support either the second or third year of your program. If you're in a 1-year master's program, like a professional degree program, you can apply before you are in your program because the fellowship would support you during that 1-year program. And so if this is you, you can apply before you've received word that you've been accepted to your program, but you would need to have been accepted by the time of the interviews in May. So that is eligibility. I'm going to keep going, and then Cora can let me know if I need to go back to any of that. The second most common question that we get is who should write your recommendation letters? Because you need 2 recommendation letters with your application. The short answer is anyone who can speak from experience about your commitment to environmental work and your leadership skills or potential. This can be your advisor, a professor in your department, or someone you worked with in the past or work with now. As long as they can speak from experience and offer examples, that's great. And then we leave it up to you to decide who those people are. Oftentimes PhD applicants will have 2 letters from people in their department because, you know, you're in it for the long haul and that's the water you're swimming in. And that's totally fine. And oftentimes master's students will have 1 academic reference and then another, like maybe from somebody that they've worked with in the past, which is also great. The third very common question is, and this is a biggie, what are we looking for in a fellow? The Switzer Fellowship supports such a broad range of topical expertise that this is definitely a fair question. We're not a specific issue funder. We are supporting environmental leaders, and that may be you. Your exact topical focus is certainly of interest, but only insofar as it has to be under the broad umbrella of environment. Now, because issues of environment and social justice do overlap so deeply in many cases, we value people who may be doing both. There definitely needs to be an environmental component and a commitment to environmental problem solving, but if you're doing that through a social justice lens, that's of interest to us. You don't need to be doing biology or engineering or chemistry, although we love those too. But we do look for people who, even if they're not directly working on issues of environmental justice, can show us that they understand the social justice implications of their work. So you might be doing some type of ecology work that really doesn't directly interact with human communities, and that's fine. But you at least need to be able to articulate your understanding and awareness of any of the ways in which that work might impact human communities. And I guess the last thing I'll say about what we're looking for in a fellow, I would really strongly suggest, if you haven't done so already, check out the 2023 fellows on our website, the current fellows, and which you can find, again, on our website. And because I think this group, as well as the groups in the past few years, are beautifully representative of what we're looking for. So those are the top 3. I'm now just going to open it up to questions, and either I can answer them or Natalia or Gabriella can.
Thanks, Erin. We have had a couple more questions about the eligibility and application come in. One question was about eligibility regarding research topics. Does the research need to be located in New England or California?
No, you need to be at a school that is based in New England or California, but your research can be anywhere. In fact, you can be anywhere, like if you're going to school remotely, but the school itself needs to be New England or California.
Great. And then we had another question that was around the applying for a second time. Do most fellows get the fellowship on their first or second attempt?
That's a great question. I don't actually have the exact numbers of how many people got it when they applied the second time. I can tell you that we have a strong contingent of fellows who did not get it until the second and sometimes the third time. So definitely, like as Natalia said, definitely worth trying again because we can give you feedback on your application too.
Great. The questions are coming in. Keep them coming in. These are great questions. Thanks, everyone. I'm just going to keep going. Again, about that topic, if you applied in a previous year, who should they contact to get feedback on the application?
Well, ideally you would contact us right after you found out that you didn't get it. So maybe that was last year. We can try to dig up the feedback from your reviewers from last year, but it's not, you can try, reach out to me and we'll see what we can do.
And then we got a question about the resume. We have two questions about the resume. One is just more about the importance of converting your CV to a resume, and then another question about how long should your resume be?
Yeah, I mean, typically the resumes are no more than 2 pages. I know that is really hard to do. And Natalia, you might be able to talk about this from a PhD perspective, because Natalia, did you say that you did convert yours from a CV to a resume for the application?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how was that a terribly onerous task?
Well, yeah. But please, someone correct me if my recommendation is not great. I actually I did go. So the University of Vermont has a resource that we can talk to people about this, and what they recommended was to really, like, the CV should like, we just list everything, right? Like, we don't have it, it can be as long as it needs to be. And so for the resume, it should be really like targeted, like it should be thought of. You don't need to put everything that you did, but really, like, from your CV, what makes sense for the fellowship you're applying to. So what would make sense for this? So, and I think it's also written in the description, to like really highlight any volunteering experience or any type of experience you have that demonstrates that leader in you, that demonstrates those leadership skills and potential in you. And so it would be, I guess, yeah, choosing and sort of like telling a story through bullet points in a resume of who you are, what you're interested in, and those leadership skills that you have gathered so far. And yeah, and then having someone look over it to give you some feedback would be great.
That's great. Yes, thank you. I think that's a great way to put it. And also, we are not gonna, it's definitely not worth putting your publications and things, because we will not have time to actually look at those. So it's definitely not worth including them. But I think Natalia, that was a great way to put it.
Erin, can I add a quick point on
Yes,
resumes?
yes, please.
So I'm definitely the kind of person that used to struggle and still somewhat struggles with shortening resumes. And just because I like to put everything in, not because I'm that accomplished. But I know where this question is coming from. Like, how do I fit everything in 2 pages or 1 page? I would just like to share that when it came to applying for the Switzer Fellowship, I was really, really, really intentional about what I put in my resume, and anything that I didn't put in, but I knew that I wanted Switzer to know about. I used either the short answers or my essay, or even better, my interview to bring those up. And so when I prepared for the interview, I was, did a lot of the preparation included really trying to remember what I didn't say on my resume or in my written portions that I really wanted them to know. So to give a specific example, part of my application or part of the, parts of my work that I wanted to communicate to Switzer when I was getting qualified for this fellowship was the internship that I had in between my 2 years of grad school. That my internship actually changed during my during the period in which my application was being considered for Switzer. And so it changed after I submitted my application, but before the interview step. And so I used my interview to really stress, this has actually changed about what information I gave you. And I really wanted them to know, because it had felt like a more profound thing to share with them than what I had submitted in the past, if that makes sense. So that was a long-winded way of saying that resumes, yeah, I would not go past 2 pages, but remember that you have other portions of your application to share what you need to share with Switzer.
Great, thank you both.
That's related to another question that we got that is sharing. Someone asked, could you give more specific tips about the original essay? And so I'll turn that over to you first, Erin, and then maybe if Natalia and Gabriella, if you want to share a little bit about what you feel like made your essays strong?
Yeah, that's great. I think the short answer is the essay really needs to give us a chance to get to know you. If without the interview, without the benefit of an interview yet in the process, the reviewers really need a sense of who you are and what motivates you to do the work that you're doing, as if it's including like challenges you've overcome or things you've encountered along the way in your life and in career so far. Those are really important. It's really getting a sense, not as much like a list of your accomplishments, but a sense of who you are as a person and as a leader. But I'll invite Natalia and Gabriella to talk about their essays too, if there's anything you'd like to share. Not specifics, but
I can share something, which I think I already sort of said. So I applied twice, and in my second application process, I reflected, like I said, a bit more in how my interests would be connected to what I would want to do afterwards. So I spent a little more time doing some reflections, and also just like like paragraphs on that in the essay, with some specific examples of the type of role and the type of things I would like to have an impact on. And also I think, yeah, some of the not feedback, the advice that I also got when I was writing my essay the second time around was to make it not so much like highlighting things and achievements and things like this, but really just like a personal story of where I'm coming from and what, sort of like what would explain my interest now. So I also spent a little more time making it more personal and more about like my story and not so much about my work.
great. Thank you.
I definitely agree with that. Because we've talked a lot about story, I'll just first reiterate storytelling, story. I think that goes for most fellowships and, grad school applications and things of that sort, where somebody is looking whether they should invest in you and they want to know what your passions and your motivations are. I would say, learn, be able to communicate the healthy balance of telling your story while also communicating what you need to about, yourself and what you research and what you study. And an even more niche tip for incorporating storytelling into essays would be to look up how to storytelling and writing. That is something that I was able to learn a little bit about before applying to the Switzer network. And so if that's something that you haven't had the opportunity to learn about, there's a lot of great resources out there about how to translate what you're passionate about, but maybe you don't know how to articulate it well or connect it to your passions. There are a lot of resources out there for that, and that'll probably be helpful. Secondly, I would say actually for the essay, so similar to what Natalia was saying, while you are trying to talk about your passions and motivations, also be almost logical about why you are doing this for that. And the reason why I'm sort of highlighting that logic step by step, like I'm studying this to do X, Y, and Z because I care about X, Y, and Z, is important because I think from a reviewer standpoint, which I have not done, but I would imagine, so feel free to push back, is that when they're reading your essays, they're really trying to see why would they invest in you. And so to be very clear about how you are going to use the stipend and opportunities from Switzer and how you are going to use it is specifically supporting the things you want to do in the future. So being very clear while also balancing, what makes a good essay, right? I think also my last tip, or I'm sure more will come up during this call, but my last tip would be review. When I wrote my essay, it was the first thing that I did in the application process because I knew that I wanted to get it done early so that I would have a couple weeks to share it with other people in my professional network that could review it for me. So take advantage of the resources that you have at your university to review your essays. Take advantage of your colleagues and your friends that will review it for you, past mentors, but make sure that you factor in the time that requires. So I would say do the essay early and get as much review as you can on it.
Thank you. That's great advice. I'd also recommend contacting your career support or financial aid office at your university if you want some of those to get pointed towards some of those resources for how to write a good essay, and maybe there's a coach there or something that can review something for you. Kind kind of changing gears a little bit, we had a couple questions about how important is it to for the candidate to have policy focus for their career?
I don't think strictly a policy focus is necessary. I think there are many different ways you can look at what applied means. And so whether it's policy is great. But even, there are other ways. It doesn't have to be strictly policy in terms of like legislation or, law. But I think as long as as long as you can articulate how you're going to apply your work in the real world, or, I'm just going to say the real world. We all know what I mean. Then I think that's what we're looking for. Policy itself is not necessary.
This is just a quick eligibility question for you, Erin. Is the fellowship available for permanent residents or green card holders?
I believe we changed that so that it is.
I think so too.
Yeah. Yep. I'm happy to say yes. That's a recent change. So thank you for asking.
And then regarding requirements for the schools that people are attending, are there any specific requirements regarding state or private or other types of institutions?
Nope, as long as it's an accredited graduate school in New England or California, you're good to go.
Great. I'm just looking at the list of questions. They're good questions. Thank you everyone for sharing these. One question is, do we know the dates for the March and September in-person retreats for this coming year yet?
We do know the dates for the September. It is that last weekend in September. It would be a Thursday, like we should actually post those on the website, but it's like Thursday, September like 28th through that next Sunday. It's like a 3-day thing. I do not know if, yeah, we will definitely. Thank you. I thought they were up there, but I'm not sure if we know the March dates yet. But it would be late February, very end of February / very early March.
Great. Let's see. Another question. We have a question about reference letters. Does having a reference letter from a previous Switzer fellow strengthen your application?
I don't know if it strengthens your application. I think it's really more important to think about if that Switzer fellow is a great recommendation for the other reasons we talked about, definitely go ahead and do that. One benefit to that is that a Switzer fellow will kind of know what should be included in a recommendation letter. But we also have sort of detailed recommendation instructions in case, for people who have, never heard of us before, can still write a really good recommendation letter. So I would say if that Switzer fellow is a great person to write that letter, do it. But if there's somebody better, don't ask that person just because they're a Switzer fellow.
Great. And then, Erin, what restrictions are tied to the $17,000 fellowship?
Very few. The 17,000 is supposed to be used on educational expenses, but that is really broadly defined, and that can be living expenses, it can be rent, food, research equipment, tuition, as long as it's an expense that you're incurring because you're in school. You just can't go on vacation with it or buy a car or anything like that. Otherwise, if you do that, it will be considered taxable income.
Great. This is a question for Natalia or Gabriella. How did you prepare for the interviews?
I'll start. So like I mentioned, I reached out to other fellows, Switzer fellows in my program, and asked them about their interview process, asked them, some of the type of questions that I should prepare. I think I read somewhere asking if we get the questions ahead of time, and at least our cohort didn't. And so, but I did, I reached out to those other fellows and asked them what type of questions can I expect. And then I actually spend time writing, answers. And preparing like for a job interview, just really first like writing them down, and then I did 2 calls with different groups of people that I asked to do like prep interviews. And so they came up with their own questions, so I wasn't prepared, I hadn't like memorized my answers. And I took them very seriously. I like tried to simulate how everything was gonna, I knew that it was gonna be on Zoom, so I did everything virtual and took it as like practicing for the real interview. And I did it with 2 different groups of people from different backgrounds, ones more academic, ones that were not academic. So I would be prepared for a more sort of broader audience, because the interviews are done by fellows, and fellows are from different backgrounds, so you can expect very different types of questions. Yeah, that's pretty much how I did it.
I'll add a bit. First off, that's so cool that you did that, Natalia. That's so cool. I would suggest if you can get 2 different groups of people to mock interview, that's awesome. Yeah, so for me, I pretty much did the same thing in the sense that we were provided not specific questions to my recollection, but specific topics or something, like in general, like what will be asked. I think it was like a bulleted list or something, but Erin, I'll let you add what folks can expect. And so I sort of took the information that we received in advance and spent some time to sit with that information and literally write underneath those bullets like what I would want to say on the interview. And then over time, make it nicer and more well worded, and sort of just I did more of like a study than a practice, where I studied sort of the content, the words, the phrases, the keywords that I wanted to say in my interview, which included like highlighting certain keywords in yellow, or like certain things in yellow that I just like really wanted to get across. So I did more of like a study prep type of thing. And then I'll mention that I did practice, I think, with one person. The other thing that I did do that might be worth sharing, and I do this in general for interviews, is just understanding that interviews are always limited time. And you might not, and because you're human, you might not say everything that you practiced to say or like intended to say. You might also want to consider putting together sort of like a 1-pager, which is not a resume, but more like a sheet of a paper or a virtual document that has like your picture and your name and just like very high level bullet points about yourself, which sounds like a weird marketing strategy, but it's just it's something that you can do post interview if you forgot to say something, or you really want people to remember you, where you can say, would you mind, if I shared this with you, and really just leave an impact on them. And so that's something that you could also consider doing. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I did.
Great, thank you both. I'll just add to that to say, like, yes, we do not send the questions out ahead of time because we want you to answer like authentically. We want it to be sort of conversational as opposed to like memorized or overly rehearsed. But again, like Natalia and Gabriela said, like you can reach out to fellows who have already gotten the award, and they can tell you the general idea of the things that are asked in the interview. So you can at least, you're not going to at least go in like completely cold, but you will not receive the actual questions ahead of time.
Great, thank you. Erin, what sort of documentation do people have to provide to the foundation about how they use the money, and if they're planning to use the money for like their research or research equipment, is that something that they need to provide information about when they're applying?
No, not when you're applying. At the conclusion of your fellowship year, you will need to fill out a very, very basic budget, saying like it's just got like 5 categories, like tuition, living expenses, and you'll need to show us how you divvied up that 17,000. But we don't ask for receipts. We don't check. So the only reason you need to do that, because we need to fulfill our fiduciary responsibilities that people are spending the money the way that we ask them to, and so that we rely on you to be honest in your responses. And if we or you get audited, you may be asked to provide receipts to the IRS, but you will not have to provide them to us.
Great. This is a question, I'm just going to read it. There seems to be a heavier focus on US-based environmental research. Is the fellowship as open to people with a global environmental focus?
Yes, absolutely. The scale of your focus is not one of the things that we, score you on in the application. International is great, local is great. So I'm not sure. I'm sure there is probably a what seems like a heavy focus on U.S. based work just because we're based in the U.S. and we're asking people to be at schools in New England and California. So there may just be a an automatic bias towards U.S. based work, but international level is fine.
Yeah, there have been fellowships awarded for people doing international research previously.
Definitely. Yep. Yep. Natalia for one.
Yeah. We had a question about what are the short answer questions in addition to the personal essay, and how can people see what those are?
Right. That's a good question because I think if you click on the application link on the website, it takes you one question at a time. I can think of a couple, and then Natalia, Gabriella, if you remember others, there's only a few. But one of them, for instance, is how do you plan to sort of utilize the Switzer network? Like, how do you plan to give back to it? What do you plan to sort of take from it? Like thinking, like just getting, I'm not sure what the exact wording is, but hearing from applicants about like how they view the network and their role in it. So that's one. So think about that. And then I believe the other is just kind of a general, like, are there other considerations you would like the review team to know about? And that, can you either of you think of any other short answer questions?
I think one of them is like a summary as well, like a short.
Yes, thank you. There's a
summary.
3-sentence, right. There's a 3-sentence question that asks about your environmental goals. Like, what do you plan to do with your career in 3 sentences?
That one that you just described was the only one still coming to mind. I don't remember any other ones. Natalia, do you?
No, yeah, those, but I wanted to bring up that what I remember is that they were like short, like we just had like characters, not even, like this amount of words, but this amount of characters. So it was like a good exercise of explaining very briefly. Those, like I do remember the one about like anything else that you would want to know, like, and then this is back to your point, Gabby, of like anything that didn't come across in your essay or in the resume for some reason, like there was like this brief space to also mention it.
I appreciate that question though, because I'm going to see if there's a way that we can just upload like a copy of the application so that you can get a sense of what the questions are before you actually log into the application. I feel like that would be helpful. So we'll check into that. Whether we can do that.
And if we do that, it will be on the fellowship application website, on our website. So, since we're talking about questions in the application, one just came in that the website states that financial needs are not taken into consideration, but the application asks about previous financial aid eligibility and offers space for further financial history background. Is this information considered?
It is not considered. And I believe that information is optional. So I think the point with that is we're trying to track like whether our applicants are coming from diverse financial backgrounds as well as all kinds of other definitions of diversity. And so like that sort of like for instance, and one of the questions is, are you a first generation college student? So it's really just so that we can get a sense of whether we're reaching people from a variety of economic backgrounds as well as various other things. It is not taken into consideration in terms of selecting candidates though.
Erin, when are applicants notified of the results?
If you are selected for an interview, you will find out by early April, and the interviews are in May. If you do not hear from us by then, feel free to get in touch with us, but we only notify the people who are going to be interviewed. And then if you're selected for an interview, you will find out but like within days of the interview, because all of the decisions about the interview are made on that day, which is a Friday, and so you would find out the following week.
And then we got a question about if fellows are open to sharing their past application materials. And I can start on that one. There is a form on our website, on the how to apply page, which you get to from the Become a Fellow page, that has a form for you to get connected with a fellow who has volunteered to connect with applicants. But because the personal essays have really personal information, not everyone is willing to share their past application materials. So if you are connected with a fellow, please be really respectful about asking for that, and maybe just talk to them about it and try to get their advice from it, and then see if they're open. But that's not something that you should assume that people are willing to share. Some folks have been willing to share that. It really just depends person to person. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Erin?
No, I think that's great. Thank you.
And then we also had a couple questions about the instructions for the recommendation letters. And on that same website, there is, you can see the instructions for recommenders. So we have a document that provides all the instructions for the recommenders. And so you can look at that and you can send that to your recommenders. You should absolutely send that to them in advance of filling out the application so that they're prepared and they know what to expect. And so that information is all on the website, and it does outline the key points that your recommenders should be able to speak to in their recommendation letter.
It's also in the application itself, so it's in more than one place.
Natalia or Gabriella, is there anything you'd like to share about the process of getting recommenders or how that went for you?
I can start. Just do it early. I think I would say just, yeah, do it early. Because the only other thing I would think of is, of course, give them as much information as possible about the network. But Switzer does a really good job of telling recommenders, or providing a resource that tells recommenders what they need to know and do and write about. So I think my only tip that I can think of is just ask as early as possible. Because people are busy and you don't want to be spending the minutes before the application is due worrying about it.
Yeah, and I think I'll only add to follow up with them just to make sure that they did send their recommendation letter. So do it as early as possible and then follow up just to remind them.
Yeah, I would definitely stress the early aspect of it, because there have been some very stressed applicants who, like there was one last year where their recommender did not submit the letter and then left the country. And so there was a lot of scrambling, and we let that person, we gave that person an extra day or something to find that, and it all worked out fine. But that was a source of stress that they could have avoided if they had done it earlier.
Actually, sorry, I will add one brief thing, because I remember, so I was a master's student when I received this fellowship and applied for it. And so one of my recommendations was from a past employer, a past supervisor, past mentor. And because I hadn't worked with her for a number of years, when I requested the recommendation letter and she approved that she would do it for me, I did send, my resume and a brief, update about me. So that's something that I think will probably come naturally to most people here, of course, but just flagging that, of course, you want to keep people in the loop that you maybe haven't spoken to for a while about why you're applying, what you're doing, and what they need to know.
Yeah.
Someone also just asked, did you reach out to your recommenders before you started the essay?
I did, but just because they're very close colleagues of mine, so they knew that I was applying that second time. Yeah, I definitely shared with them that I was applying and that I needed their recommendation letter and asked them if they would be willing to. Yeah.
I think I did too, but I really can't, don't quote me on it. Can't remember exactly. They might have been done. I might have started my essay the same week I asked recommenders. I can't remember exactly.
This is a question for Erin, I think. For the leadership or leadership potential question, what scale of leadership are we looking for? For example, is this on the scale of founded their own nonprofit or is involved on their campus? Can
All
you
of the
speak to
above.
that?
Yeah, I mean, it is such a wide range of experience that we get in the applications, but all of the above, really, if it's campus activities that you can talk about, great. If it's founded your own nonprofit, also great. Just think of the sort of the highest and best examples of your leadership that you can provide in the essay, and those are the ones I would go with. And the scale doesn't matter.
And then this is a question for Natalia and Gabriella. What kinds of opportunities or events have you enjoyed most from being part of the Switzer network?
I guess I'll start. Well, I think we have both mentioned the retreats. So I'll, yeah, highlight the retreat where we met our cohort. In 2022, we met in the fall in September in California, and it was just like really a really special moment. Things like the place was beautiful. Getting to know the group was really great. We had like 2 amazing facilitators. And so it was, I really enjoyed that. And then I'll also share something else that we haven't brought up, and I think it's something that I've also really enjoyed, and is that 2 times now when I've been to scientific conferences, we can like share in the network who else is going to that same conference. And so it has also been great to like meet other fellows outside of my cohort that I wouldn't otherwise, know in that conference. And so it's like helped with networking, and also like we've gone to really nice restaurants. And so it's been great. I really enjoyed that.
I'll be brief because I know we're running short on time, but retreats, agree. To say something different, definitely have also appreciated the calls that we've had in sort of like the affinity groups under Switzer. So there's like a Latino, Latinx, Latina call that happens that's organized by, I believe, one of the fellows in our cohort actually. So that's been great. So there's still opportunities for connection beyond retreats. And then I think secondly, another opportunity that I just want to echo that I've really particularly enjoyed is opportunities for job listing opportunities and internship listing opportunities that I truly feel special every time I've been sent one via email, because it really is something that you have access to as a Switzer fellow.
Thank you both. We also had a question, and Erin, maybe you can speak to this briefly. How direct does the applied aspect of environmental work need to be?
Great question. I'm not sure if there's an easy way to answer that. I think, I don't know. Yeah, I'm having a hard time figuring out how to answer that. I guess since there is such a broad range of such a big spectrum of applied, I'm not sure there is really, we don't really have a definition for direct applied. I think even if it's like on a time scale that's like you expect to, have, apply your work in 5 years, or if it's like applied in the sense that there are various layers of people through which you have to apply. I think that's all fine as long as you can be really clear about what you see the end goal being. Like, it's like maybe your applied version is sort of diffuse, but like, what's the end goal? What's the environmental goal here at the very end of the day?
Yeah, I will just echo that that's a really important part of the review process, is having a really clear focus on how you're planning to apply your education and your career into your career goals, like Natalia was saying. Great. Well, is there anything else that Erin, Natalia, or Gabriella you would like to share before we wrap up?
I'll invite Natalia and Gabriella, or if you have anything else you'd like to share, and then I'll say one quick thing.
I'm happy to go first and switch it up, Natalia. I think I just want to say again what I said earlier, which is to apply. I'll be very honest, I've dealt with imposter syndrome and different feelings of like, I'm probably not going to get this. And this was something that every time I was notified with each round that I was moving forward, I was just like, that's crazy. And so please just apply. And also somebody who, you know, was very busy in grad school, had a lot of responsibilities, multiple jobs, multiple classes, right? Like it is truly worth the return on investment here is truly worth the hours that you will put into this application. So if that's also a hesitation, you know, I don't have time to apply to this, I don't have time to go to retreats, please still consider it. It's a great opportunity, and I'm really grateful for it.
Yeah, and I think I'll echo that and add something that actually, Gabby, you mentioned before, and it's just like it is very worth it, and not only because of this, like, yes, the stipend, but in the first year in which you're a fellow and you do these retreats and these trainings and your cohort, but it's also, I think, just to highlight that it's like a lifelong community and network, and there are like tons of other opportunities. There are some grants that you can also apply to afterwards. So this is like a career investment. So totally worth it.
Great. Thank you both. And I will just say, since we want to make sure that we end on time, that if you have questions that didn't come up today, feel free to reach out to me or any staff, really. Our contact information is on the website. We'd be happy to answer your questions. And thank you all for being here, and good luck.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.